Challenging ourselves with riddles is one of the many ways we can train our minds to be sharper. Here to tell us more about boosting our brain power and improving our memory is psychologist and author Dr. Cynthia Green. Welcome, Dr. Green.
Thank you. Hi.
Really nice to have you here.
Great to be here.
So, are you born a great puzzler, or can you learn to be a great puzzler?
I think when it comes to puzzling, intellectual activity, memory, we can train ourselves to be better by practice. But we might have a kind of predilection for it. We might like doing things that are verbal, but anyone can become better just by practice, right?
Right, right. So practice will help you.
Absolutely.
What about doing? What about puzzles? Why doing them boosts our brain power?
So one of the great things about puzzles or hobbies that challenge us to think differently and to kind of think out of our own little box is that it boosts our intellectual engagement. And there's actually studies that have shown that the more intellectually engaged we are, the more we may have an associated reduced risk for developing dementia later in life.
Oh,
so
well,
keeping our brain
nice.
active and engaged is really important.
Yeah, I really think so. And I think a lot of people are doing the wonderful puzzles that are available in the local newspapers, in magazines nowadays. It's really fun. And this Sunday, the New York Times Magazine had a fascinating article by the brother, Joshua Ford, the brother of Jonathan Safran Ford, one of my favorite writers. Who knew that Jonathan now has this genius brother? It's called Total Recall, and it's a book about memory and about training your brain to have almost total recall.
Right.
So you read the book?
I read the book.
Yeah.
I finished it last night. I got an advance copy. And it's fascinating because here's a guy in his 20s who just decided he was going to go and compete in the memory competition. And really, these guys are like training for a marathon. And they use these ancient techniques that have been around since ancient Greece to memorize vast amounts of information. But, many of us may not want to put in the time to train. We might be happy going out for a jog to keep ourselves healthy. And there's a lot of things we can take out of what they do that are simple and more practical to help us remember things like where we put our keys or, the name of someone that we just met.
Well, there's one chart in here which drove me crazy the minute I looked at it. This page of numbers,
right?
You have 3 minutes to memorize them. That's it, 3 minutes. Get going.
Right.
So now, what are some of the memory techniques that we can use that you recommend?
Right. So most of us might want to remember a phone number, for example, not necessarily a whole page of numbers to compete.
Do you remember your phone number as a child?
I actually do.
I do too.
And I actually used it once in a lecture.
257.
New Jersey.
Oh yeah, 201, Nutley, New Jersey. I mean, it's so crazy. I wake up thinking of the numbers. UN 54750 is my New York phone number when I first got my first apartment.
They're really embedded in your memory.
But they say that the reason that you remember them is they're broken up into smaller groups of numbers.
And that's one of the techniques that I teach. When you want to remember a list, it's easier to remember a shorter list of several numbers rather than one long list.
And they were easier to remember when they had letters in them.
Right.
University 5.
Right. Oh, that's a very New York kind of thing.
Yeah, Butterfield
right?
8.
Yeah.
nobody nowadays remembers. Yeah, Triborough
exactly.
6. Nobody. North 7, 5792. I mean, it's so much easier then.
Right. But chunking, if you think of things like our social security numbers, our bank numbers, chunking is a great technique. Simply repeating it. If you meet someone and you want to remember their name, get into the habit of automatically repeating that name. It will definitely boost your recall for that name.
And what do you think about, clocks are digital. You have all your phone numbers programmed, and all you have to remember is 1, 2, 3 to 100 instead of all the numbers. And then, so you don't ever learn the number.
Right.
You just put the numbers in. If I had to call my daughter right now, I would not know how to reach her.
Right.
If I did not have my cell phone.
Right, because you don't rehearse the number.
No.
So one of the things that happens is we don't have the opportunity to learn that information.
And kids aren't, well, it's not a good example today because we have Molly here and we have others young people
they have
here.
some slight advantages. One of the things that happens as we grow older also is that we're more challenged by speed of processing information and flexibility. But if we play games against the clock, so the kinds of games that we're talking about today, puzzles and things are great, but we're not always playing them in a competitive way against the clock.
Better to do that, right?
Against yourself.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, anything you play against the clock, you have to pay attention, you have to think quickly, you have to think flexibly, and that will help with the age-related changes that we have. So all different kinds of
Playing
things like that are
playing
really important.
Scrabble on your iPad. I mean, that's against somebody else that you don't know. Those are fun. Those are really
Yes.
fun, and they do challenge you.
They do, absolutely.
do.
So I talk to people about stretching your brain with these kinds of intellectual engaging activities, challenging your skills, and using strategies like repeating information, connecting, making up a story for a name. Those